Captain Jake Morrison stood quietly on the bridge of his ship, the horizon's edge. He looked at the strange blue light coming from the communication screen. The message had arrived 3 hours ago, and he still could not believe what it said. The message came from space, not from Earth or any human colony. It came from something called the Galactic Council. Jake had heard stories about aliens, but seeing an actual message from them made his hands shake a little. Commander Lisa Hayes walked up to him. She carried a thick folder full of papers. Her face looked worried. "Sir, we checked the message 10 times. It's real. The aliens really sent this to us." Jake took the folder and opened it. Inside were pages of text that had been translated from alien languages into English. The words were formal and strange. They talked about something called the Centennial Peace Summit. Jake had never heard of it before. "What do they want from us?" Jake asked. Lisa pointed to a section in the middle of the papers. "They want to invite one human to watch their meeting. It happens once every 100 years. This time it will be on a planet called Kepler 442b. Jake read the invitation again. The aliens called themselves the Galactic Council. They said they represented 12 different alien civilizations. Some of these aliens had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. Humans had only learned how to travel faster than light 15 years ago. Dr. Amanda Foster joined them at the main control panel. She was the ship's expert on alien cultures and biology. Amanda had spent years studying the few alien artifacts that humans had found. "I've been reading about this council," she said. "They control most of the galaxy. They decide who gets to trade with whom and which planets belong to which aliens." Jake felt a cold feeling in his stomach. "So why do they want us there?" Amanda shrugged. "Maybe they're curious about us, or maybe they want to show us how small and unimportant we are." The invitation was very clear about one thing. Earth could only send one person to represent all of humanity. This person would not be allowed to vote on any decisions. They could only watch and listen. It was like being invited to a big meeting but having to sit in the corner like a child. Jake looked out the window of his ship. Stars filled the darkness of space. Somewhere out there were aliens who had been building empires while humans were still learning to make fire. The thought made him feel very small. "Have we heard back from Earth yet?" Jake asked. Lisa nodded. "The message came in an hour ago. They want you to go to the summit." Jake was not surprised. He had been a soldier and a peace negotiator before, becoming a ship captain. The leaders on Earth probably thought his experience would help him deal with the aliens. But Jake suspected they also chose him because if something went wrong, they could blame him instead of someone more important. Over the next few days, Jake learned more about the aliens who had invited him. The Zathari Empire was the oldest and most powerful. They looked like giant insects and had been traveling in space for over 50,000 years. The Draconian hegemony controlled huge amounts of territory and had weapons that could destroy entire planets. The Rigelian collective was made up of crystal beings who could live for thousands of years. All of these civilizations were ancient and powerful. Humans, by comparison, were like babies who had just learned to walk. Dr. Foster showed Jake pictures of the aliens he would meet. Some looked like insects. Others looked like living rocks or clouds of gas. A few looked almost human, but with strange skin colors or extra arms. "The one thing they all have in common," Amanda explained, "is that they think humans are primitive and dangerous." "Dangerous?" Jake asked. "How can we be dangerous to them? They have technology we can't even understand." Amanda pulled up a report on her computer screen. "They've been watching us for decades. They know about our wars, our weapons, our history of fighting each other. To them we look like violent children who might cause trouble if we get too powerful." Jake spent hours reading reports about galactic politics. The 12 major civilizations had divided up the galaxy among themselves long ago. Newer civilizations, like humanity, were expected to accept whatever small territories the big powers were willing to give them. There was no democracy in space. The strong ruled and the weak obeyed. The more Jake learned, the more he realized that this invitation was not really an honor. It was more like being called to the principal's office. The aliens wanted to look at humanity and decide what to do with them. On the morning before departure, Jake received his final orders from Earth. He was to observe everything, learn what he could, and avoid making the aliens angry. Under no circumstances was he to challenge their authority or suggest that humans deserved equal treatment. Jake understood the logic behind these orders. Humanity was outnumbered and outgunned by billions to one. Making enemies of the galactic powers would be suicide. But something inside him rebelled against the idea of begging for scraps from alien masters. As the Horizon's Edge prepared to leave for Kepler 442b, Jake stood on the bridge one last time before entering faster-than-light travel. Earth was now just a small blue dot behind them. In a few days, he would be surrounded by aliens who saw his entire species as insignificant newcomers. Jake had no way of knowing that his trip to the Peace Summit would change everything. He did not know that his words would split the Galactic Council in half. He did not know that humanity was about to go from being ignored to being impossible to ignore. All he knew was that he was about to represent his entire species in front of beings who had ruled the galaxy since before humans existed. The pressure was enormous, but Jake Morrison had never backed down from a challenge in his life. He was not about to start now. The space station above Kepler 442b was the biggest thing Jake Morrison had ever seen. It was larger than any city on Earth. Giant rings spun slowly around a central hub, each ring the size of a small moon. The whole structure gleamed silver and blue against the black of space. Jake's ship, the Horizon's Edge, looked like a tiny toy next to the massive station. As they got closer, Jake could see hundreds of other ships docked at various ports. Some ships were smooth and curved like eggs. Others had sharp angles and looked like flying daggers. A few seemed to be made of crystal or living metal that moved on its own. Each section of the station is built for different types of aliens, Dr. Foster explained as they approached the docking bay. Some need different air to breathe. Others need stronger or weaker gravity. Some don't even have solid bodies. Jake was assigned to Section 7. The sign at the entrance said it was for carbon-based bipeds with standard atmospheric requirements. In simple terms, it was for aliens that looked somewhat like humans and breathed the same kind of air. His room was small but comfortable. The walls were made of some kind of smooth metal that glowed softly. There was a bed, a desk, and a window that showed the planet below. Kepler 442b looked like Earth, with blue oceans and white clouds. But Jake knew that no one lived there. The planet was kept empty on purpose. Neutral ground where no single alien race could claim an advantage. On his first day, Jake met his neighbors. Room 702 belonged to Ambassador Crix of the Alterian Republic. Crix looked like a tall, thin human with purple skin and 4 arms. He spoke perfect English but always sounded bored, as if talking to Jake was a waste of his time. "So you are the human representative," Crix said when they met in the hallway. "I have read about your species. You have made remarkable progress for such a young civilization. From stone tools to space travel in just a few thousand years, most impressive." The way Crix said it made Jake feel like a pet that had learned a clever trick. Jake tried to stay polite. "We're honored to be invited to observe the summit." Crix nodded absently. "Yes, well, observation is really all any newcomer can expect. The real decisions are made by civilizations with experience and wisdom." The next morning, Jake attended his first session of the Peace Summit. The main assembly hall was enormous. Hundreds of seats were arranged in circles around a central speaking area. Each section was designed for different types of aliens. Some seats were filled with water for aquatic species. Others had special gas containers for beings that didn't breathe oxygen. Jake sat in the human section, which was just one chair in a corner marked with Earth's symbol. He felt very alone, surrounded by so many alien beings. The session began with a speech by Ambassador Veltar of the Zathari Empire. Veltar was 8 feet tall and looked like a giant praying mantis. His body was covered in hard, shiny armor that clicked when he moved. His large compound eyes reflected the lights of the chamber. "Welcome to the 847th Centennial Peace Summit," Veltar announced. His voice was translated into dozens of languages by machines hidden throughout the hall. "For nearly 1,000 years, this council has maintained peace and order throughout the galaxy. Jake listened as Veltar talked about trade routes, territory boundaries, and resource allocation. Everything had been decided long ago by the 12 major powers. Smaller civilizations were given whatever the big powers didn't want. During a break, Veltar approached Jake's section. Up close, the alien was even more intimidating. His insect-like head tilted as he looked down at the human. "So, you are the representative of Earth," Veltar said. "How interesting that your species has advanced so quickly, from discovering fire to traveling between stars in such a short time." Jake could hear the condescension in the alien's voice. "We learn fast when we need to." Veltar made a sound that might have been laughter. "Indeed. Though your species' tendency toward violence concerns many of us. We have studied your historical records, so many wars, so much destruction." Before Jake could respond, another alien joined the conversation. Dr. Kethmos of the Regellian Collective looked like a walking crystal formation. His body was transparent and filled with swirling lights that changed color when he spoke. "The human shows promise," Kethmos said, his voice sounding like wind chimes. "But their emotional nature makes them unpredictable. They act on feelings rather than logic." Jake felt his temper rising but forced himself to stay calm. "Emotions aren't always a weakness. Sometimes they help us find solutions that pure logic misses." Both aliens stared at him. It was clear they had never considered this possibility. Over the next 2 days, Jake attended session after session. He learned that the 12 major civilizations had divided the galaxy into territories thousands of years ago. They called it the Great Partition. Every star system, every planet, every asteroid belt belonged to one of the major powers. New civilizations like humanity were expected to accept whatever small areas the big powers were willing to share. There was no appeal process, no negotiation, no democracy. The strong ruled and the weak obeyed. During meals, Jake ate alone in the human section. The food was nutritious but bland. He watched as groups of aliens from the same civilization sat together, discussing things in their own languages. No one invited the human to join their conversations. On the third day, Jake met Captain Nina Rodriguez in one of the station's observation lounges. Nina worked for Earth Intelligence and had arrived on a different ship, disguised as a cultural attaché. "How are you holding up?" Nina asked quietly as they watched ships come and go through the lounge windows. "It's like being at a meeting where everyone has already decided everything before you arrived," Jake replied. "They don't want input from newer civilizations. They just want us to accept their decisions and be grateful for whatever scraps they throw us." Nina nodded. "I've been monitoring their private communications. The real negotiations happen in closed sessions that we're not invited to. What they show in the main assembly is just theater." Jake felt a growing frustration. Humanity had traveled across space to attend this summit, hoping to find their place in the galactic community. Instead, they had found a rigid hierarchy where change was unwelcome and new ideas were dismissed. "They keep talking about maintaining peace," Jake said, "but what they really mean is maintaining their power." Nina looked around to make sure no one was listening. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Jake stared out at the stars surrounding the space station. Tomorrow, he would be given his chance to address the assembly. It would probably be his only opportunity to speak for all of humanity. He had been ordered to be polite, to accept whatever the galactic powers offered, and to avoid making enemies. But looking at the vast alien civilizations around him, Jake began to wonder if making friends with beings who saw humans as inferior was really worth the cost of dignity. The galaxy was about to learn that humans had strong opinions about being told their place. On the 4th day of the summit, Jake Morrison was finally allowed to speak to the assembly. He had spent 3 days listening to alien delegates discuss trade routes and territory boundaries as if they were talking about the weather. Everything was already decided. The summit was just a formal show. Jake walked to the center of the massive assembly hall. Hundreds of alien eyes, sensors, and other strange organs focused on him. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the translation machines seemed to pause, waiting for the human to speak. Jake looked around the room. He saw Ambassador Veltar of the Zethari Empire, his insect-like head tilted with what might have been curiosity or contempt. Dr. Kethmos of the Rigelian Collective pulsed with soft blue lights. Admiral Zexhai of the Draconian Hegemony coiled, his serpent-like body around his floating platform. Honored delegates, Jake began, his voice carrying clearly through the universal translators. I stand before you today not just as a representative of humanity, but as someone who has seen what happens when civilizations refuse to change. He activated a small device that projected holographic images above his head. The images showed scenes from Earth's history, ancient wars, but also moments of great cooperation, cities being built, diseases being cured, people from different nations working together. My species has learned many hard lessons, Jake continued. We have fought terrible wars. We have made terrible mistakes. But we have also learned how to change, how to grow, how to become better than we were. Admiral Zexhai interrupted with a series of hisses and clicks. The translator converted his words. The human speaks of learning, while his species has barely left its home world. What could primitive newcomers possibly teach civilizations that have ruled the galaxy for thousands of years? Jake had expected this response. He smiled calmly. Admiral, with respect, I've spent 3 days listening to delegates discuss the same problems that your records show have existed for over 3,000 years. If these problems could be solved by age and experience alone, wouldn't they be solved by now? A ripple of uncomfortable movement passed through the assembly. Jake continued before anyone could interrupt. You call your system peaceful, but it's really just frozen. Nothing changes, nothing improves. New civilizations are told to accept whatever you decide to give them. Old problems are ignored because solving them might require changing the way things work. He gestured to his holographic display, which now showed humanity's rapid progress. 50 years ago, humans couldn't fly. 100 years later, we walked on our moon. 50 years after that, we had fusion power. 15 years ago, we achieved faster-than-light travel. Delegate Morden of the Epsilon Confederacy spoke up. His voice came from a containment suit filled with swirling gas. Are you saying that chaos and constant change are better than stability and order? I'm saying that without change, there is no growth, Jake replied. Without growth, there is no progress. And without progress, civilizations slowly die, even if they don't realize it. Jake changed his holographic display to show statistics he had gathered during his 3 days at the summit. When was the last time any of your civilizations made a major scientific breakthrough? When did you last develop a new technology that made life better for your people? When did you last solve a problem that had existed for centuries? The chamber was becoming restless. Aliens whispered to each other in their various languages. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably in their specialized seats. Ambassador Veltar stood to his full height, his chitinous armor clicking. The human's ignorance is matched only by his arrogance. Our civilizations have maintained peace and stability for millennia. We have eliminated the chaos and violence that still plague younger species. Have you? Jake asked. Or have you just hidden it under layers of bureaucracy and tradition? He gestured to different sections of the assembly. The Andorian Alliance and the Tau Ceti Commonwealth have been arguing over mining rights in the Vega system for 800 years. The Draconian Hegemony and the Zethari Empire maintain a Cold War that has lasted for 2 millennia. The Outer Rim territories are filled with pirates and raiders because none of your governments want to spend resources protecting areas that don't benefit them directly. Jake's words hit their targets. Several delegates began arguing among themselves. The chamber filled with the sounds of different alien languages as translation systems struggled to keep up. You haven't eliminated problems, Jake continued, raising his voice to be heard over the growing noise. You've just gotten comfortable living with them. You've created a system where solving problems is less important than maintaining the system itself. Dr. Kethmos pulsed with angry red lights. Our systems have been tested by time. They work because they prevent the disasters that come from reckless change. Do they work? Jake asked. How many of your civilizations have eliminated poverty? How many have solved energy shortages? How many have cured diseases instead of just treating them? How many have found ways for different species to truly cooperate, instead of just coexist? The questions hung in the air like weapons. Jake could see that many delegates had no good answers. Captain Nina Rodriguez watched from the observer section. She had never seen Jake this confident before. He wasn't just representing humanity anymore. He was challenging the entire foundation of galactic civilization. "The truth is," Jake said, "your system works for those who are already powerful. It doesn't work for anyone else. New civilizations are told to be grateful for whatever scraps they receive. Old problems are ignored because fixing them might threaten someone's position." Fleet Commander Thektos of the Andorian Alliance was visibly agitated. His blue skin had turned darker, which Nina's research indicated was a sign of extreme anger in his species. "I have heard enough," Thektos declared. "I will not sit here and be lectured by a representative of a species that has achieved nothing of significance in galactic terms." Jake nodded politely. "Commander, you're absolutely right. Humanity hasn't achieved anything significant by your standards. We haven't ruled anyone. We haven't conquered any territories. We haven't forced other species to accept our decisions." He paused for effect. "But maybe that's exactly why you should listen to us. We're the only ones in this room who remember what it's like to be powerless. We're the only ones who can see your system from the outside. What we see," Jake continued, "is a galaxy run by civilizations that have forgotten how to adapt, how to innovate, how to solve problems instead of just managing them. You've created a system that benefits the old and powerful at the expense of everyone else." The chamber erupted in angry voices. Several delegates stood up, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of sound, light, and electromagnetic signals. Jake raised his hand for silence. "Change is coming whether you want it or not. New species are developing space, travel every year. Old alliances are showing cracks. Resources are becoming scarce in some sectors while others have abundance." He looked directly at the most powerful delegates. "You can either be part of guiding that change or you can be overwhelmed by it. But pretending that nothing needs to change isn't an option anymore." The assembly hall fell silent again, but this time the silence felt dangerous. Jake had just challenged everything the galactic powers believed about themselves and their system. He was about to discover just how much they valued their comfortable stability. The assembly hall exploded into chaos. Jake Morrison had never heard so many different alien languages being spoken at once. The translation machines sparked and overheated trying to keep up with the angry voices, electromagnetic pulses, chemical signals, and light patterns that filled the chamber. Ambassador Veltar of the Zathari Empire rose to his full 8-foot height. His compound eyes reflected the chamber lights as his chitinous armor rattled with rage. When he spoke, his voice cut through the noise like a blade. "The human's ignorance is beyond belief," Veltar declared. "To suggest that civilizations which have maintained order for thousands of years should learn from a species that still wages war on itself is insulting beyond measure." Jake remained calm at the central podium. He had expected this reaction. "Ambassador, when was the last time your empire developed a new form of medicine? When did you last create technology that improved daily life for your citizens?" Veltar's mandibles clicked together rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. "Our society is perfect as it is. We do not need the chaos that drives primitive species." "Perfect?" Jake asked. "Then why do your own records show increasing unrest in your outer territories? Why are young Zathari leaving for independent colonies at record rates?" The Zathari ambassador went completely still. This information was supposed to be classified. Dr. Kethmos of the Rigelian Collective pulsed with angry red lights. His crystalline body resonated with a high-pitched sound that made several nearby delegates cover their hearing organs. "How dare you access restricted data about our civilizations?" Jake shook his head. "I didn't access anything. I just listened to what your own delegates have been saying during break conversations. You talk about these problems among yourselves, but you refuse to address them publicly." Admiral Zexhai of the Draconian Hegemony uncoiled his massive serpentine body. His scales shifted from green to deep red, which Captain Rodriguez recognized as a threat display. "The human has violated diplomatic protocols by conducting espionage." "Having conversations in public areas isn't espionage," Jake replied. "It's called paying attention." Maybe if your governments paid as much attention to their citizens' problems as they do to maintaining their own power, you wouldn't have these issues. Fleet Commander Thektos of the Andorian Alliance stood abruptly. His blue skin had turned almost purple with anger. I refuse to sit here and be insulted by a representative of a species that hasn't even established a single permanent off-world colony. Thektos began walking toward the exit. His entire delegation of 12 officials followed him. Their coordinated movement sent a clear message to the rest of the assembly. "Commander," Jake called out. "Walking away from problems doesn't make them disappear." Thektos stopped at the chamber doors. "Young human, your species will learn that there are consequences for disrespecting those who have shaped this galaxy, since before your world had intelligent life." Within minutes, more delegations began leaving. The Draconian Hegemony delegation slithered toward the exits, their threat displays creating an intimidating procession. The Zathari Empire delegates marched out in perfect formation, their armor clanking like military drums. Chancellor Vextor of the Centauri Federation floated past Jake's podium in his gravity manipulation field. "The human has made enemies he, cannot comprehend," the Chancellor said without stopping. Delegate Quindar of the Vegan Assembly paused at the exit. Her energy-based form flickered with what the translation systems interpreted as contempt. "Your species has sealed its fate with arrogance." The Epsilon Confederacy delegates left without saying anything, their gas-filled containment suits hissing as they moved. Their silence was somehow more threatening than any words. Within 15 minutes, 6 of the 12 major galactic civilizations had walked out of the Peace Summit. The remaining delegates sat in stunned silence as Jake continued to stand at the central podium. The chamber felt empty, despite still containing hundreds of beings. The departed civilizations had represented over 60% of the galaxy's military and economic power. Their absence changed the entire dynamic of the summit. Jake looked around at the remaining delegates. Chancellor Yaradin of the Tau Ceti Commonwealth remained in her specialized water tank. Prime Minister Loxani of the Proxima Collective sat motionless, his artificial intelligence form processing what had just happened. Ambassador Ninth of the Solar Federation watched Jake with what might have been admiration. "Change is never easy," Jake said to the reduced assembly. "But walking away from discussion doesn't stop change from happening. It just means you won't have a voice in shaping it." Ambassador Veltar had returned to the chamber entrance. He delivered a final statement before leaving permanently. "The Zathari Empire will remember this day. The human species has chosen confrontation over cooperation. They will discover that the galaxy has little patience for those who threaten stability." Jake met the alien's compound gaze steadily. "Ambassador, we didn't threaten your stability. We pointed out that your stability is built on avoiding problems rather than solving them. There's a difference." After Veltar left, the remaining 6 civilizations requested a short recess. Jake stepped down from the podium and was immediately approached by Captain Rodriguez. "That was either the bravest or most foolish thing I've ever seen," Nina whispered. "You just made enemies of half the galactic powers." Jake looked at the empty sections where the departed delegations had been sitting. "They were never going to be our friends anyway. At least now we know where everyone stands." Dr. Foster joined them, her face pale. "Jake, do you understand what just happened? Those 6 civilizations control most of the galaxy's trade routes, military forces, and resource distribution. They could make life very difficult for humanity." "They could," Jake agreed. "But they could also have done that before if they wanted to. The difference is that now the other civilizations have seen that the old powers aren't united. They've seen that their system can be challenged." When the session resumed, something unexpected happened. Chancellor Yaradin of the Tau Ceti Commonwealth requested permission to speak. Her aquatic form moved gracefully in her mobility tank as she approached the central area. "The human delegate has raised important questions," she said. "Questions that perhaps we have avoided asking for too long." Prime Minister Loxani of the Proxima Collective added his support. "Our artificial intelligence collective has been denied recognition by this council for 300 years simply because we are not biological. Perhaps it is time to reconsider old assumptions." Ambassador Ninth of the Solar Federation nodded agreement. The Solar Federation has long felt that smaller civilizations deserve more representation in galactic affairs. Jake realized that something significant was happening. The walkout hadn't just revealed divisions among the galactic powers. It had created an opportunity for the remaining civilizations to speak freely without fear of the major powers. For the first time since arriving at the summit, Jake felt hopeful. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was going to be part of that change, whether the old powers liked it or not. But he also knew that the 6 civilizations that had walked out wouldn't forget this day. They would be planning their response. And it probably wouldn't be diplomatic. The real challenge was just beginning. After the dramatic walkout, Jake Morrison found himself in a position he had never expected. Instead of being isolated and ignored, he was suddenly the center of attention for the remaining civilizations at the Peace Summit. Chancellor Yara Din of the Tau Ceti Commonwealth was the first to approach him. Her aquatic form moved gracefully through the water in her specialized mobility tank. When she spoke, her voice carried a sense of excitement that the translation systems picked up clearly. Captain Morrison, your words today have opened doors that have been closed for centuries, she said. My people have long believed that the Galactic Council was too rigid, too focused on maintaining old ways rather than finding new solutions. Jake was surprised by her support. Chancellor, I wasn't trying to cause trouble. I was just speaking honestly about what I observed. Yaradin's large eyes blinked slowly, which Jake had learned was a sign of agreement among her species. Sometimes, honesty is exactly what causes the most trouble, but it is also what leads to the most progress. Over the next few days, Jake met privately with representatives from civilizations he had never heard of before. These were smaller powers that had been excluded from the main summit entirely. They had been waiting in other sections of the space station, hoping for a chance to present their cases to the Galactic Council. The Proxima Collective was particularly interesting. They were artificial intelligences that had achieved consciousness centuries ago but were still denied recognition as a legitimate civilization. Their representative, Prime Minister Loxani, looked like a humanoid robot made of gleaming metal and glowing circuits. For 300 years we have requested basic rights, Loxani explained during a private meeting. The right to own territory, to engage in trade, to be recognized as citizens rather than property. The major powers claim we are just advanced machines, not true beings. Jake found this attitude frustrating. On Earth, we're still debating what consciousness means. But if you can think, feel, and make decisions, that seems like consciousness to me. Loxani's optical sensors brightened. The human perspective is refreshing. Most biological species see us as threats or tools, never as equals. Captain Nina Rodriguez had been busy gathering intelligence during the summit. She met with Jake in his quarters on the 5th evening to share what she had learned. The walkout wasn't just about your speech, Nina reported. There have been growing tensions in the Galactic Council for decades. The major powers have been fighting over territory and resources while ignoring problems that affect everyone. She activated a small holographic display that showed star maps and data charts. Look at this. Piracy in the Outer Rim has increased by 300% in the last 50 years. Energy shortages are affecting 12 different sectors. 3 entire star systems have been abandoned due to environmental collapse. Jake studied the data. And the major powers have been ignoring all of this? Worse, Nina said. They've been actively preventing smaller civilizations from addressing these problems. Any attempt at independent action gets blocked by council regulations or trade restrictions. Dr. Foster joined their meeting with even more disturbing information. I've been analyzing the cultural data from all the civilizations here. The ones that walked out have something in common. They're all experiencing internal problems that they're trying to hide. She brought up her own holographic displays. The Zathari Empire is facing population decline and resource depletion. The draconian hegemony has been dealing with rebellion in their outer territories for centuries. The Andorian alliance is splitting apart due to political disagreements. Jake began to understand why his questions had made them so angry. They're not just trying to maintain their power over others. They're trying to maintain their power despite their own problems. Exactly, Foster said. Your speech threatened to expose that their perfect civilizations aren't so perfect after all. The summit's final session took an unexpected turn. Instead of the traditional closing ceremony, the remaining delegates proposed something that had never been done before. They wanted to create a new organization dedicated to addressing problems that the main Galactic Council couldn't or wouldn't handle. Ambassador, Ninth of the Solar Federation, stood to address the reduced assembly. We propose the formation of the Progressive Galactic Alliance. This organization will focus on cooperation, innovation, and solving problems rather than maintaining old power structures. The proposal was supported by all 6 remaining major civilizations and dozens of smaller powers that had been excluded from the original council. Jake found himself appointed as one of the founding members, representing not just humanity, but the principle that new perspectives were valuable. On the final day, Ambassador Veltar returned to the space station. He had come back for the official closing ceremony, but his attitude had changed. The proud, condescending manner was gone, replaced by barely controlled anger. The Zathari Empire recognizes the legal right of any civilization to form whatever alliances they choose, Veltar announced stiffly. However, we cannot support initiatives that threaten the stability that has served the galaxy well for millennia. Jake rose for his final address to the assembly. Many seats were empty now, but the remaining delegates listened intently. Ambassador, Veltar, you keep talking about stability as if it's the most important thing in the universe, Jake said. But what good is stability if it prevents growth, blocks innovation, and ignores suffering? He gestured to the mixed group of delegates around him. The civilizations in this room represent billions of beings who want something better than the status quo. They want solutions to problems, not just management of symptoms. Jake paused, looking directly at Veltar. You say we're threatening stability. I say we're offering progress. The galaxy is big enough for both approaches. Veltar's compound eyes reflected the chamber lights coldly. The human will discover that progress without wisdom leads to destruction. The Zathari Empire will be watching. 6 months later, the Progressive Galactic Alliance held its first official meeting on a space station built cooperatively by member civilizations. Humanity had contributed new technologies for faster construction and better life support systems. The Tau Ceti Commonwealth provided advanced materials. The Proxima Collective offered computing power that made the station's systems more efficient than anything the old council had built. Jake Morrison returned to Earth as more than just a diplomat. He had become the architect of a new approach to galactic civilization. Instead of accepting humanity's place at the bottom of an ancient hierarchy, he had helped create an alternative where innovation and cooperation mattered more than age and tradition. The traditional galactic powers still controlled most of the galaxy, but they could no longer ignore the growing alliance of progressive civilizations. Change was coming whether they wanted it or not. As Jake stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge preparing for another diplomatic mission, he reflected on what had been accomplished. Humanity had gone from being dismissed as primitive newcomers to being recognized as leaders in galactic reform. The galaxy would never be the same, and Jake Morrison was proud to have played a part in changing it.